Good morning, everybody. Seeing that we have a quorum for the Resilient Coastal Communities Program Community Action Team, that's a lot to say, workshop, which we've scheduled for today, January 27th, 2022 at 10 a.m. here in Council Chambers. Call the meeting to order. If we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we proceed, does anybody on the action team have any suggested changes or additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not me. Good. No.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed. We've already called the meeting to order. I do not see any old business before us, so we will proceed to item number 3, new business. Part A, review of the draft by Moffatt Nichols of our risk assessment, which was revised, dated January 21st, 2022. Chad, you want to start us off?
Sure. This is, we got this revised document from Moffatt Nichol. It was hoped to have to my understanding, it has the updates that we discussed on 2 weeks ago with the wind stuff in there. I know there was additional comments of, especially from Mr. LeBruner, that was emailed to me about the tornado map and stuff like that, that has been emailed and forwarded to Don with Moffatt Nichol. And bringing this here today is get a general consensus of where we're at with it, but also Moffatt Nichol, they have to present this to DCM, they have to get this closed out. What that does is that moves this into, we have a document. It's a living, like just a regular document. It's a living, breathing document. If we need to move into a phase where we look further into this and amending this and tailoring it more to what we want to do outside of what Moffatt Nichol has provided for us, then that's where we need to go. But I want to get general comments on where we thought we were with this, with the revisions from Moffatt Nichol.
Okay. Thank you, Chad. I'll start it off, and then everybody please chime in. I believe that the amended risk assessment, vulnerability assessment dated January 21st, 2022 by Moffatt Nichols does address the major points that I and other members of the community action team had brought up at our last meeting. Notably, wind as a natural disaster that should be addressed very specifically on its own merits within the report, and I believe they have generally done that. There are some housekeeping items, some figures that need to be renamed or renumbered because the order was thrown out as they added new things to it, but that's housekeeping, and I think our member John Farrell addressed those very specifically in an email that I saw that I believe he sent to you, Chad. I don't know if that's gone on to Moffatt Nichols or not.
It is not, but I will, if there's housekeeping items of how it's labeled and categorized in table of contents and stuff like that, I can definitely, that's going to be something that's going to be pretty important that they get, because they'll have to look at that.
And even more than just housekeeping, and a number of the members of the board in individual conversations have brought up the fact that figure 10 for social vulnerabilities, it just seemed to me anyway to not be appropriately labeled. It's labeled in degrees of colors, dark versus light, and I believe that some of them are opposite of what I think was intended by the author. So I'd like Moffatt Nichols to specifically look at that figure 10, the new figure 10 in the revised version. Also, a number of our members of the community action team have brought up the fact that when they're talking about vulnerability assessments in section 5.2.6 under vulnerability scores for critical facilities. They clearly label town hall and they deal with it, but I don't believe they're giving proper
Police station,
yeah, that the police station is a part of town hall, and thank you, and that it in its vulnerability or the aspects of vulnerability are certainly expanded by it not just being where town staff and town hall is located, but also our police staff, which is obviously extremely important to the community during a natural disaster and in the resiliency following it.
Can I make a comment on that one?
Please, let's start. I'm finished. But
Oh,
John, do
okay.
you want
Well,
to start?
just
We'll work our way through
specifically,
it.
so you're referring to the last table, which gives us scores, right?
Well, I'm looking at 5 point.
On
What-
page
what
26.
page number? Page 26.
Yes.
Well, this is sort of this. It looks like a sort of a bureaucratic exercise. They figure out they got 3 places they put at, and the previous table to that under storm surge, only Station 1 is impacted by Category 4 and Category 5, and then all 3 of them are impacted by the 100-year possibility of an impact. Which, when I look at that, it says to me that there's not a whole lot of vulnerability in the town and for those critical places. I mean, for one,
And that's not true.
and well, that's part of it. There's not enough explanation in there to kind of back up the scores.
That's supposed to be picked.
And fire station number 1 is clearly most vulnerable because of its elevation, its proximity to storm surge, its proximity to and the potential for the wind, and that. But basically the way this thing comes out, station number 2 and this building here are relatively not vulnerable, and it just part of it is they need to do a better job in explaining what these charts mean and come up to a conclusion. That conclusion should be the thing that guides us on where we go. And if you look at this, basically it says we got to move fire station number 2, where part of our discussions in the content is the real concern we have is the emergency operations system capability in fire station number 2.
I don't think they're saying
No.
move station number 2, John, but I think they're saying it is the most vulnerable and that we need to have a
No.
alternate
No, it's
location
Am I reading
for it.
this wrong? The vulnerability score is a formula above, exposure plus sensitivity minus adaptive. So the most vulnerable is fire station 1, then
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
It's written in the order.
Yeah.
It's a formula. They show it to you above. And I believe sensitivity is supposed to take that into account. Now, whether town hall should be a 2 and fire station 2 should be a 3 or not, you got to go back to the handbook, and I defer to
Yeah.
John on the handbook because he's a handbook expert.
Yeah.
So what they're saying here is fire station 1 is the most vulnerable.
Yeah, okay, I may have said it wrong. Fire station 1, I understand it.
Right.
My point is, okay, if the last thing in this paper is fire station 1 is most vulnerable, there needs to be some kind of a text, a recommendation, a conclusion that comes in, so what do we do about it? And when I look at these charts in that, fire station 1 is the most vulnerable of those 3 critical assets, but it's not a particularly vulnerable facility here in the town. I'm not sure if I'm being clear or not.
I think that's where the projects come
That's what.
in.
Then this leads to the projects.
Yeah.
Most of your projects should
John,
have station 1.
let him finish and let's work our way down.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll never
If I
get
can interject something real
everybody's
quick, I think one of the
viewpoint.
projects that was submitted was the idea of moving Fire Station 1 to a different location.
temporarily.
Was it temporarily?
Well,
or more
No, this
permanently?
is relocation of emergency facilities.
Yeah, so I
And
think
that's-
they were insinuating that they were looking
Yeah.
at Fire Station 1 of reload. That would be one of the projects that was submitted in the 11 of that's the most vulnerable one. Potentially, since it's vulnerable, using this this assessment to back the data up to potentially get funding for potentially, if that's what the town wanted to do, and budget for that and see what funding we can get toward that of moving emergency services to a,
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
And by disagreeing, I mean to say I don't believe they're saying we don't need to have fire station number 1 continue to operate as it is right now, as our primary fire station.
okay.
But they are saying that in the event of a natural disaster, fire station number 2
Yeah.
needs to have certain upgrades to make it compatible with a relocation during that disaster of the emergency operations center to that facility. And it talked about sleeping arrangements, it talked about additional communications, it talked about things that are not there right now. It's fire station number 2.
My point is, this thing should end with a so what.
Okay.
And the so
And
what.
please, John, finish.
And that's the so what is it is vulnerable in case of emergency. These capabilities need to be prepared to be moved and relocated. I don't think rebuilding and putting a new fire station in.
You know, and that's
We
where,
can put a levee around the fire station a lot cheaper than we can find the land and build a new one.
And that's the good thing about the, the living, breathing documents of that. It's not just this document, it's the projects itself. Pete brings up a great point by disagreeing with me.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look like we move that whole building and pick it up and drop it off somewhere else. It could be upgrading existing facilities just like this one
And
into a more emergency operations center when
as
we
a
get
point,
to that
the
point.
location of station number 1 right now best facilitates the daily operations of the fire department with its central location for response to our municipality and ETJ.
Correct.
Where fire station number 2 is more on the peripheral of our, not of our fire district, but of our municipality.
Yeah.
So,
But it's not that
all right,
far.
let's
But
let
the
John
point that-
finish.
I mean,
Let him finish.
I mean, the point is, go through there is I think for a project this concern is discuss moving the EOC capabilities to a alternate location in case of emergency.
Right.
That's
Anything else specifically, John?
I would think.
You'll get another chance.
Okay, we'll go through. Yeah, let's work it around.
Sybil?
No, I want to hear what Ron had to say.
All right.
Well,
She's given
on
the
this
floor to
particular
you.
topic, I guess, maybe it's just the way I view the thing. This table leads you to the projects, but it's not supposed to call out the projects here. It's the next step. So, I mean, project 7 and maybe 7 and 8 apply to the high vulnerability score of fire station 1. Now, you can create more projects. There could be a project 12 that says build a levee around station 1, or you could say project 13 is buy land and create a whole new place, and a project 14 and then evaluate each project. The way I understood it, and again I defer a little bit to John because he's a handbook person. He knows the handbook the best. That you do this table, and to me it's unfortunate we're only listing 3 vulnerable places because I think there's more vulnerable places, and we didn't bother lifting them, but that could be added, I guess. And then you score them so you know which projects should be the highest priority, or multiple projects.
I agree. That will lead us to the projects.
Right. So that's the way I viewed it. Now maybe I view it wrong. As far as the book is concerned, generally, yes, I agree exactly what Pete said, is that they certainly moved in the right direction. A little rushed in my mind, obviously on the wind. They stuck it in there, looked at hurricanes because that was easy. They already had that information. Didn't look at other wind events. I mean, I threw out the tornado one because in 10 minutes I could get the map. And I don't even have a login at NOAA. That's why I didn't do a NOAA map, because you need a login. I didn't want to bother registering. I assume they can do that to get the tornado tracks all the way up to 2020 or so. Correct. So I just did it. That one, the public site that I use was only good to 2017, and we know for a fact there was tornadoes after 2017. So to me, that should be an easy add. And you say, why do it now? Because in my mind, it gives you a broader perspective that wind events occur, hurricanes themselves, spin-offs of hurricanes, and other storm events that occur that there could be a hurricane nowhere near you at the time. I think it just broadens the hazard in my mind. That's why I thought. Then a couple small things. I agree to the socioeconomic table. I don't believe is right. It's either backwards or
What page is that?
that was the one. Pete was table 10. Now is that it?
Figure 10.
There's something wrong there. And I don't have a color copy. Well, I do have a color copy. It didn't seem to make sense to me either.
Pete, what page?
Try page
21.
21. There's something wrong there, I guess. Either in the color coding or I think the answer you kind of come up with what's the most vulnerable social economically, but it seems like where the island is versus. But anyway, I guess maybe all I'm asking for them is to take a second look at that section and make sure they've color coded it and rated it right. You know.
Have some comments.
And then a
Hear
couple,
that.
I think there was only, other than that, other couple small things on housekeeping cleanup, or you guys have, I didn't duplicate any of that because you guys had better lists than I had, so. Other than that, with the time
I didn't
constraints,
finish
these
it.
small changes, and then I guess the one question you, Chad, I think I asked it last time, what is our deadline on this? We were at the deadline already.
We're at the deadline.
Right, so.
I mean, and can I speak
Sure,
onto that
sure.
real quick? I mean, my idea with this, we're at the deadline.
Mhm.
We're going to have this.
I have
document.
February 22nd as a date that I came across that talked about Moffett Nichols being done.
I'm not sure what
finished
happened.
in-
I'm not sure exactly what happened in February. All I know is that DCM is calling for this. Really, they want it now.
Well,
They want the assessment now.
Well,
they
here's-
want
here's the
phase
biggest
one.
point.
They want phase 1 and 2.
we asked DCM in our telecast meeting the last time,
Right.
and they said they hadn't read the assessment yet. And we all unanimously said in various different language, we said, we want to make sure that the format of this report, even though we realize it's not cluck, squeak, and feathers per the planning handbook, is it acceptable to DCM in its present format, or is DCM going to come back and say non-compliant?
Yeah, and all I know is that this comes down to budget, not our budget, but theirs.
There's who?
The $30,000 per town, how it was divvied up.
Well, I asked the question a long time ago. It said it was a $90,000 contract for three towns.
Three
and I didn't-
towns. Yeah, 30,000 each.
It didn't
Yeah.
say 30,000.
Our the grant was 30,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
I wanted to make sure that Ron was finished.
Sure.
It's good. So
Sybil, you have the floor.
All right, this is sort of jumping ahead a bit, I know, but I look at this list of 11 things, and I agree with some of the things you positioned. But what I don't understand is why waterfront bulkhead enhancement, living shoreline, and shoreline protection aren't one. Why is that not one? It's all shoreline, and
you-
it's all what we need to do to protect
are you
it.
talking about?
Project.
I'm talking
projects?
about this.
I don't think they're projects or any specific order. I think that's
Well, I'm
just
not
how they
talking
come
about the
in.
order. Why are they all separated? I mean, this is Project 3, Project 4, and Project 5.
They gave them a number only to give each project a number. Some of us on the CAT have taken those same numbers without changing them and prioritized them.
But she's saying some could be combined, and I agree.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
The relocation of emergency facilities and emergency preparedness plans and materials, that's one thing.
Well, and that's where staff would work together to enhance these projects, work together, combine them to sort, and what would allow us to get the most funding for that. So any one project is not set in stone what you
Okay.
have in front of you.
All right, because
It is how staff can work it with Public Works, Stormwater, budget or financing, town administration.
Chad, am I correct that Moffett Nichols took the projects that we authored, the ones that we in our windshield view of the town and meeting with town staff and all the things we did in our separate groups, which were then sent through you to Moffett Nichols.
Correct.
They took those ideas and those are the projects that they have in fact come back to us 1 through 11.
To my understanding, yes, that is correct.
That's what they look like.
Yes.
But the
But
other
not
thing
all.
too is the more things we have in a project, how that would make us more, it would be more necessary to get funding
Yes.
because we have these things to deal with.
Well, we have to be careful though. If we combine living shorelines, let's say with bulkhead raising, those
No.
are two distinct. Even though they are similar in location and function, they are totally different technologies and have totally different aspects to facilitating.
Yes.
I would say that we don't want to combine things as different as that.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Are we going to cover this stuff when we talk about the projects?
Yeah, in step two.
Want to finish the risk
Yeah, we can
assessment
finish-
first, and
yeah.
then
We need to get
All right,
Then-
you had the floor, Sybil, please.
Okay, no, I pass now because that, to me, there again, I'm trying to get it done in the fastest way we can because the pressure's been put on us to do it.
Sure.
And I understand that, yeah, a lot of it could use a whole lot more research, but our hands were tied from the get-go.
John Harrell.
I have a very different view of this assessment report. First of all, the report was not changed to incorporate all the requirements of the planning handbook. Secondly, the input that we gave Moffett and Nickel is not incorporated in the narrative document. It is, we can recognize what they put in the project list, but they have no reference to any of that information in the narrative report. And I don't think section 5, their vulnerability assessment, is anything more than a very superficial review of information about the town without considering the detailed inputs from the town. And they've written this thing with very clear lack of understanding of the island. I mean, they refer to it as a coastal strip. You know, they don't even recognize that it's a barrier island. They don't identify it properly. In section 5.2.3 on page 24, they talk about sea level rise. And they associate Sunset Beach with Wilmington, North Carolina, where back in their earlier section on sea level rise, they very clearly say that we're associated with the data from Southport. And what they put in here is twice the level of sea level rise that we can reasonably expect at Sunset Beach because they used the wrong data. So I have very little confidence in this report and consequently in all of the table 6, table 7, table 8, all of that stuff to me is questionable because they haven't included the right data. And everybody has a copy of my detailed comments. Some of them are nitpicking, I admit, but I think there are some questions that need to be answered. Or this report really doesn't accurately present our case.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more, John, but I believe there's two things that we need to be very concerned about. One is DCM accepting this assessment as the appropriate step to move for Sunset Beach to be able to move forward with the program. And the second thing is that we need a document in the future that we can fall back on. I'm not saying like the Campbell Land Use Plan, but a document, an official document, which this would become once we accept it, that we can rely on and our citizens can rely on months and years down the road as concerns, as facts, as avenues that we have suggested here at CAT be pursued.
Well, this has to be accurate and correct, and this is not, in my estimation. The information they were provided, the procedures outlined in the handbook to be followed, haven't been done. It's and I understand we're under pressure because I expect that Moffett and Nickel has used all, if not exceeded, their budget for this work. But they chose how to spend their money. We didn't tell them how to spend their money.
The planning handbook, however, is a Department of Coastal Management, a DCM document.
Right, and
And
it's very clear
so-
that the requirements of the handbook have to be followed.
But the author needs to best interpret their own requirements. And that's why we asked specifically
Right.
to the DCM representative when she was on the call last meeting 2 weeks ago, whenever that was.
It was 2 weeks.
Do we know if there's been any communications to that effect?
What delayed us getting this document in particular, because we were supposed to get it on a Tuesday. I think I got it on a Thursday or
It was
Friday.
supposed to be last Monday or Tuesday, but Monday was a holiday. But
Correct. Monday was a holiday, snowstorm, all that. I know that DCM come their way through it. I didn't get any notes or responses back from DCM. They were probably giving them Dawn with more just Moffett Nickel in general. Staff is stuck between kind of a rock and a hard place with this because I don't think that the contractor is going to put any more time and labor into this. And then you have the town that's not specifically happy with this. And then you have, this was a grant. We didn't hire Moffett Nickel, therefore the town didn't throw any money.
they work for the state.
They
yes.
work for the state. So I'm trying to figure out how do we navigate this because Moffett Nickel is ready to take this to DCM. If it's approved by DCM, it's going to be a document that we use. Now, at this point, does staff take a look at this? We're coming into budget season, bring something to council to how do we take this document and make it better, make it our own standalone, audit it, do we hire somebody to do that? I've had some preliminary conversations with administration about that, on how we proceed this moving forward. The other biggest thing is that we're going to get into conversations with is the projects, and that was the biggest thing that was supposed to come out of this was the projects.
If we throw the baby out with the bathwater right now, then our goal is to
Yes.
help our citizens be more resilient during natural disasters.
Correct.
I am not, and I think some of the things, because I saw John's report,
Sure,
I think
yeah.
it was an excellent
Yeah, and I'm not
edit that he did, but I think some of the stuff is somewhat nitpicking. But
and I'm not discrediting anything. It's just, and that's why we did this between staff and this board today. Of we're here, and Mr. Corbett.
John,
I do agree with most of what John said, but I think we're past the point of being able to make those fixes to do this. I think we're at the point where we have to take this document. I would like them to give it a good edit. I mean, they still got the numbers all screwed up, and there's a lot of contents, there's a lot of details that I disagree with. I mean, starting off with the first line about our future land use plan. They need to make it clear it's the 2017 CAMA land use plan that they've cited several times in there, just as a beginning, because that's the only land use plan we have, and it's not called a future plan, although that does what it does. But I think overall, with the many criticisms, specifics that I have, and the things that are on John's list, this does take and put us in the ballpark of saying, okay, these are some of the contributing factors that we need to use as the baseline to justify why we have to do some fixes in our community, why we need to prioritize and do this. So my thing is to give them the changes we can, let them know the text things that they should have picked up in the edits. If I would have turned this in to anybody that I had a contract for, I would have been fired. We would have lost the contract. I mean, that's just the basic, just based on the way it's not carefully edited and the facts aren't lined up. But it still puts us in the right place. You mentioned the onus then becomes on DCM to accept what Moffett and Nichols gave them.
To my understanding, that's
Okay,
correct.
so that still gives us a position that we can go through, we can come up with our projects and figure out what needs to be done. We have the general levels of areas of concern that we have pointed out, and this sort of validates.
Yes.
So I think we can move forward with that. If DCM gives it to us, then this becomes a Town of Sunset Beach planning document effective 1 March 2022. From that point on, we can rewrite and edit and do things that this is a planning document. Because one of the things when we get around to writing grants is we're going to have to be able to cite that we have a basic risk analysis document. And working off that risk analysis document can help us justify the proposals that we put in and we go for the grants. Because we're not just looking at the 3 or 4, and I'll probably consider them kind of smallest grants that will be offered as a result of this project, but those will be kind of low-hanging fruit that we can document, justify, and get funding for. But this gives us a planning document as we go out into the future. The question of bulkheads, raising bulkheads, would be a major community project on the island and along our shoreline. You know, that's going to be long-term. We need to look elsewhere for money to help supplement
and
that.
I mean,
The road fixes would be the same type of thing.
Yes.
I don't know what the baffles that are in here for filtering out the stormwater flowing into.
Depends on how many locations
Yeah,
you facilitate.
well, I mean, but that type of thing, you know, to me, that's
They're about
something.
$25,000 each.
Okay, to me, that's something. You look at the American Rescue Plan and the concerns for infrastructure. That would be a major project. We could go after $3 or $4 million to do that through the American Rescue Plan or something, rather than going at this rent project.
correct.
So wrapping all back around, I'd say let's do what few fixes we can do right now. Tell them, clean it up and send it to DCM, see what DCM says, and meanwhile we work on our projects.
All right, and coming to you next, Sybil, but let's address that. We have to figure out a way to facilitate that action, and I agree with that action. And everybody will get their chance to bite at that apple.
Yeah.
We can't individually do those edits. It wouldn't be reasonable. We have to do it through Chad, through town staff.
Yeah.
For the most part, we've already sent you that information
Through the emails.
through the
In
emails.
the
Now, we
past
can
2 weeks.
resend the emails to you because there's been a lot of emails on emails and response and forwards. And,
Yes.
how do you want to get we'll call it housekeeping, and then we'll call it structural, because there are some structural things like the vulnerability charts being changed in color, light and dark. Those are major.
Yep.
Because if somebody's going to read that, they're going to say,
Yep.
the opposite of what I think should be the reality of our structure in the town.
Correct.
How do you want us to provide you our thoughts on
If
that?
you will, just like we did 2 weeks ago, take a Word document, put them in a Word document, however, categorize that how you want to, and I will combat all that together and send it
But
to
if you
Dawn.
just send those on to Moffett Nichols, and I'll put my hand up in support of them right now.
Mhm.
There's going to be duplicate and triplicates, and there's going to be differences of opinion. I'd submit that we send it to you.
Mhm.
You create the edits in another list and
Okay.
send just that list to Moffett Nichols.
Okay.
What does the rest of the committee think? John, you had your hand up.
Question. Do we have this report as a Word document or as a PDF?
Both, I think. Both, I think.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I understand that we're being pushed to end this thing. And I understand that Moffett and Nickel probably has run out of money. And the DCM wants something back. I think we need to go on the record with the DCM that we have issues. Now, we just have to document it. This is a record for the future. But whoever looks at this has to be able to see the other side of the story. They have to see what goes with this. So when we go back to Moffett and Nickel, we can say, all right, we have your report. Here are our comments. these two things should be put together and provided to the DCM.
Now I can forward it to not only Moffett Nickel, but I can also forward it to Tankard and Mackenzie Todd, who has been DCM's representative on our phone call.
She was on the call last time. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
maybe before we do that, we ought to have a conference, you and whoever else in the staff should have a conference call with Tankard and with Don and say, okay, here's where we're at. Here's what we propose to do. And before we throw a bomb at you, let's be sure we all understand that we agree to disagree. And we know we need to move forward on this.
Yeah.
I think there's enough in these projects that we can add to them or take away from them.
Or combine them, or yeah.
Combine them and come up with something that gives us a good basis to choose from and to go back to the DCM with. But it's not going to follow their plan because it's not done that way. It's going to be more of an ad hoc evaluation. So, I mean, there is another way, and I think we ought to push on it and do it.
Well, I think we're all in agreement that the first part of that way is to get the edits in, and statements such as parts 5 and 6 of the handbook, we don't believe that they were followed appropriately.
And our input wasn't considered.
Well, I don't know that our input, yes, okay, I agree. I agree with what the words you just said, yes. But we need to move forward, and Chad has to take what we say, and even that comment about parts 5 and 6 of the handbook, we don't believe that they were followed completely. Or
The
followed.
requirements of 5 and 6
Yes.
are not shown in the,
There were minimum requirements listed in the handbook.
right.
But we need to make that statement, and John, that'd be certainly, you make that statement eloquently. That goes to Chad, along with the fact that figure 10 needs to be figure 9, and
Right. And all
table
that's,
10 should be 12, and there's a
all that's
misspelling.
detailed in.
Okay. All right, Sybil, you want to comment
I'm
on
in
that?
agreement. I'm in
Okay.
agreement.
Ron?
Couple things. Well, according to the North Carolina Brazilian Coastal Communities Program scope of work for Moffett and Nichols, this thing terminates on January 31st, 2022, Sunday. Okay? Now, according to their scope of work, they have not met their scope of work. Clearly, especially on the mapping, especially on step 5. Okay, and step 6. They have not met that. There is no ArcGIS map. So they have not met their scope of work. I think, if I was managing this project, and their termination says the contract will terminate on January 31st, 22, extension requests will be approved on a case-by-case basis. I would go on record and said you have not met your scope of work, and we would like an extension. In lieu of an extension, we would like these changes made by Sunday and submit them with the notation on it that the document's subject to change with notice.
Well, and the document is subject to approval by DCM as to minimum requirements
So-
being met in their handbook.
Well, that's what the scope says.
Yep.
Their scope letter signed by Dawn York and other folks here, Mackenzie
And-
Todd, I
and
can't read this
DCM.
other person, Patrick something? I don't know. Whoever signed the scope of work for the 90 grand, they ain't met their scope of work. That is based on the things that John has said and everybody else. They have not met their scope of work. So going on record and telling them you have not met your scope of work, that doesn't mean you don't. Then the next step is get the document as close as we can. Realize they're only going to work on it today and tomorrow, and they're going to submit it tomorrow afternoon. So whatever, I'm not writing any more documents. I'm done with that because that's a complete waste of my time. So I'm done with it. You got it. You want to use it. You want to burn it. I don't care anymore.
Let's make sure
But-
that he has what you have sent.
He has it.
But let's
I
just
do.
confirm that
It's
he
in a
has.
Word. You put it in a Word.
Mine was in a Word
doc
document.
type thing.
Yeah, I put it in the spreadsheet version. I thought that would be too difficult, so I went ahead and peeled it all off and put it in. So you have 2 Word documents. If you want to use it, don't.
But even in a Word document, if we put it in an email to you, you can take that and put it into, because it really should go as one document, not 5 documents to Moffett Nichols.
Correct.
That's too confusing.
Well,
for
and
them.
they've all gone to Dawn as one document, with the exception of the potential project.
What I think we don't know, and the only way we will know is after they submit. DCM has written an excellent handbook that John understands. Are they going to stick to the handbook? That's their decision.
Correct.
They can ignore the whole thing if they feel like it.
See, this
But-
shouldn't be
so I've
strange to them. They have 2 other clients, too.
Right.
This
So,
should not be.
There's always the what's written
Yeah.
and then what's
Yeah, 'cause
done.
I'm sitting here thinking, it's like, who decides if they've met their scope of work or not?
DCM.
DCM does.
Yeah.
Right. But whether we go on the record and not saying we don't think it's done yet,
Correct.
and all I'm saying is going on record that we reserve the right to continue to update, change, grow. I mean, you're going to have to get it in tomorrow by 5 o'clock or whatever. That's the end of their scope. So they're going to submit something.
Yes.
Now, whether we have any control or not, I agree, sort of take our 5 most important changes and get it to them today. And maybe they'll put somebody on it to get them in there before they submit, and then so be it. But as long as we reserve it that, or somehow get on record that we don't think it's done completely to the rules yet, and would need an extra 4 to 6 weeks to get that done. So if DCM looks at it and says, it's close enough, we'll take it, we don't care, right? Sort of.
Chad, you're the clearinghouse for this. This town staff is through you as our liaison.
Correct.
What can we best do here to enable you, and I don't have to repeat what we've just said,
Correct.
but there's certain minimum requirements. It has to do with DCM accepting the report of the assessment as being in compliance with the handbook.
Right.
It has to do with probably a dozen housekeeping things, several charts that need to be reviewed and looked at to see if they need to be flip-flopped. Do you need, I mean, Ron just said he's not going to submit anything else. I'll submit what you need. My goal is to get you by noontime tomorrow at the latest, even earlier than that, something that you can get into Moffett Nichols' hands with the statement that we appreciate the fact that their scope does state that it expires January 31st, and that we therefore would like an extension because we don't believe that they've complied. Those statements have to be made to them, not just up here in the dais, but what do we need to get in your hands and by when?
That just what you want me to forward to them so I can combat it into one document.
But you've already gotten a plethora of information.
It's just weeding out. I don't really have the time to weed through the emails back and forth because there's a lot. I think there was a couple with.
So it's
each one of them.
consolidated
It's just
into a
consolidated
specific
into one.
list of changes we think need to be made.
But
Ron,
moving-
can you share yours? Did you?
I can share it.
Yeah.
I sent it to Chad and
I'll share it.
and Lisa.
But here's where we're at. I think what Mr. Corbett said is pretty important here looking forward. If DCM is okay with this and they accept it, you know, it goes back to the point that they brought up. Mr. LeBruno was just talking about. Who are we to call their scope of work complete or not complete? If the town is not happy with it,
Well, I think it's obviously not complete, but it depends
you-
on how low.
It depends on your viewpoint of where you're
want to
looking at
lower
it.
the bar
Yes.
at DCM. That's
So
DCM.
my thing moving forward is that and John's right, you know, taking a document, taking the projects, you have this to back up the projects, but if this ain't right, how do we fix it? And I think that's where staff is going to have to figure out as we move forward into grant funding through stages 3 and 4, or we look toward other places because there's other people on staff here that do have extensive grant writing experience of what backs up that, and how do we then potentially audit this document to then help our projects move forward with funding and not just out of our fund balance and lowering that
Well,
because
our job is not done today with just this assessment evaluation. It's the January 31st drop dead date,
correct.
which was established by Moffett Nichols, not by us. Also includes prioritization and ranking of projects and details of projects.
So
That's planning, project identification, and prioritization.
Mhm.
No, we haven't even talked about phase two. I mean, we're still, phase one is the assessment report. Phase two is,
Well, but the drop dead date of January 31st includes phase two.
I know.
Yep. I know what I'll take the comments and forward them and talk with Lisa about where we need to go as far as moving forward with the risk assessment.
I mean, I'll put together some things this afternoon and get them to you.
Right.
And I have gotten John's report and I've John Farrell's report, and I've gotten Ron LeBruno's report. So I can, if they don't want to do anything more, I can at least try to interpret their statements and get that to you. But it'll be in an email.
Right.
Now I can put it in a Word document, but I don't think it needs to.
That's fine.
My email does not need to be forwarded on to
And they won't
Moffett Nichols.
They won't
It
be.
needs to be, because there may be, we look to you.
Yes.
We look to town staff.
Yes.
If there's things that you think we're out of bounds with,
Right.
then that's your
Correct.
authority
And I'm going to kind of
prerogative to ignore.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of speak on that now. It's not really out of bounds, but this is just where we're at. Cut and simple. We're with a risk vulnerability assessment that the changes may or may not be accepted, and it's going to be presented to DCM
I think
for
what we're,
acceptance.
in my mind, what we're trying to avoid, and maybe we can't, is that I thought I turned that down. Is that we come up with a project, for some reason we get 100% agreement, it's a perfect project, fits the criteria, submit it for money because we think it fits, and they look at our risk and vulnerability assessment and say, well, it's not properly
And that's where
risk and vulnerability in this document
and
you
that's
sent
where we're
us.
going to have to.
So I
figure
can't approve this project because this document
Right.
didn't properly
and I see
rank
the,
it.
I see the issue.
That's what we're trying to
I
avoid.
know, and I see it.
Right.
It's just we have a grant that was given to us
Right.
that's
Yep.
exceeded budget.
So
and
we
a
are where we are.
contractor
Yeah.
that January-ish, is going to drop dead this, and this is our risk vulnerability assessment, and these are our projects. And then how does the town take these projects with the risk vulnerability assessment and move forward with it?
All right, give us
And that's just where we're at.
marching orders then as to time and what you need and want and by when.
So we haven't even talked about the projects, and we're getting ready to talk
Well,
about
but we
that.
need to finish with the
Yes.
assessment, vulnerability assessment.
I would say
phase
by the end of
first.
today, get me your comment
By the close of business today.
today, so I can
All right.
get your comments back
If-
first thing to dawn in the morning.
If somebody
I
can't
will-
do it, that's fine. If you can do it,
That's fine.
I'm going to do it because
Yes.
I want to make your job
Yes.
not as easy as possible, but I want to make it as clear as possible.
Yes.
And I
Um,
will add to my comments.
All right. So that would be on the risk vulnerability assessment.
And there may be some of our comments that you say, no, I'm not going to
Yeah, there
advance
could
that.
be. And then part two would be we have projects. They have given us the projects off the what is submitted. I think we need to accept the projects not as concrete, set in stone, but as projects overall as a broad idea to move forward. And Lisa and I have talked about this. Not only it's not just going to be me and Lisa. It's going to be me, Lisa, Dustin. There's going to be a whole staff. And then
The chiefs.
the chiefs, the department heads,
Well,
and
have
to
you-
also work with individuals to help us move forward with that.
You've seen our projects that we submitted to you as independent teams. We had
Yes.
like 4 teams, I think.
Yes.
And a lot of them are duplicate, and most of them are duplicate, which is great. If we
Yes.
saw the same thing from a different windshield, that's healthy. But has town staff taken those 11 projects that Moffett Nichols translated or summarized from all of our stuff and sent it back to us? Have you taken those 11 projects and, well, I guess maybe rescoped them, clarified them? Because some of them are just not written properly. They took a couple of our projects and combined them, and they were in different parts of town.
Well, I mean, and I think
and
that's-
required different solutions. But has the town staff looked at those 11 projects?
So we have glanced at them. I mean, I know I have. I've had a couple conversations with Lisa about them. And Dustin and Matt, I think, have a general idea of what this could look like.
We've only got a couple days to
Well,
solidify
and I think
that.
the projects, and I don't know if it needs to be solidified. I mean, you know, they can, the solidification comes with staff working with department heads, knowledge on this board, expanding this board. I mean, individually, I don't know if we'll come back as an ad hoc committee, but we'll reach out to you individually and use you or to make sure we don't have a quorum, but also it's going to come to, you know, expertise. Like, I'm going to rely on Dustin and Matt. You know, it's with Public Works Director and then Stormwater. Those are a couple of our biggest issues in the town on what to really move this forward. You know, they're capital improvement projects on how to move this forward. And essentially, you know, staff will make the decision.
Some are, some aren't.
And part of that team is the expertise on this board and in this town and the partners that we have with it on you know, what works. You know, will this work? How do we get there? Because ultimately we're going to have to go to council with this and say, hey, this is what we're getting a grant for. We're getting X amount of money for this. Will council, you know, on a majority vote, agree to either pass the ball on X amount of dollars out of the budget or not to move forward on this?
How do we plan project identification and prioritization by January 31st?
Well, the first thing, that's the bureaucratic thing that they need to put into, Moffett and Nickel needs to put it into the submission as an appendix to the risk assessment that goes to DCM. So basically, we could almost just take the 9 or 11 projects they have there, and if we want to re-wicker the priority, re-wicker it and tell them to go with it.
I don't even think they were prioritizing them.
Yeah, they have
are
it,
the
but
first ones
we
that
can
did that.
give them a prioritization, they can send it in and go. And that meets the requirement, DCM response. One of the things that's going to come up, DCM yet has not told us how much money is going to be available for grants, you know, which has a major impact on how we take and formulate, when we really get down into details, what we're going to do. But my guess also is that money is going to be allocated to DCM, who's running this whole project, and they're the ones who are going to be approving the grants or not.
They had thrown around $3 or $4 million as at least a starting point for this.
40,000 per project is the estimate.
All right.
So that gives us, there's not a whole lot we can do with $40,000.
You know, we're also not limited to just the funding that DCM is throwing into this. There's plenty of other grant opportunities out there.
My point is, today, we don't need to get wrapped around the axle with the finite details of the projects. We just take a look at these categories. If we want to re-wicker them in terms of the order that we look at addressing them, give that back to Moffett and Nichols so they can get their report in. DCM can make their evaluations.
Well, a couple of us have done that.
Then we kind of start framing which of these projects can we put in for a grant and get done within that $40,000 limit, and which of them become major infrastructure projects that would go for other sources like the American Rescue Plan or other North Carolina, whatever it is, various grant money that's coming in. But that doesn't get done today.
I mean, you can take a look at the project list. There's 11 of them there.
Yeah.
Are there 11 good ideas that we can work with to move forward? I mean, again, you can.
And we've already sent you some clarification
Yeah,
on them.
you
I think
have.
Ron, I don't know if you did or not, John. Maybe you did. Did you prioritize the projects?
No, I don't think there's enough information there to put a priority on them. But let me point out a few things that are clear to me reading the handbook. First of all, the list of projects they want you to come up with are not all going to qualify for grant money.
Correct.
They want towns to prioritize projects, and they will help find other sources of money. They will work with the communities for other grants and to find other ways to do some of these things. Their ultimate goal, which was striking to me when I read it the other day, in phase 4, their ultimate goal is for their money to be committed to nature-based solutions solely. So other types of solutions, infrastructure, redoing roads, rebuilding bridges, all that kind of stuff, that it was never their intent that their grants would cover that kind of stuff. That they're looking at living shorelines, they're looking at rain gardens, they're looking at all that kind of stuff on a large scale for committing money to help do those things. So we should understand that, and if we want to put a comprehensive list together as we prioritize things, maybe we should put the nature-based solution possibilities at the top of that list to get the best attention and interest from the DCM.
Well, the thing I sent you and sent everybody individually, I had 5 categories that I used, 5 attributes that I used to rank the projects. And
Right.
one of them certainly was, is the project nature-based? Now, it didn't mean that if it wasn't nature-based, it wasn't going to be considered, because I'll disagree with you. I think, yes, the DCM in their handbook is certainly pushing towards nature-based solutions, but they are not eliminating others. They are certainly sending up clear signals that nature-based solutions stand a much better chance. It's what their goal really was.
No, I didn't mean to say they were eliminating them, but they're not. They're saying we'll help you find other sources of money for those. But the thing that we want to commit our
I didn't
money
read it that
to,
way, but I'll reread it.
the thing we
I
want to
respect
commit our money
your
to
editing, so I'll read it.
is nature and nature-based solutions.
Mhm.
However, the statement of work that Moffett and Nichols gave us on their step 2 of this phase says identify at least 5 priority projects per community, including at least one NNBS project, nature-based.
Well,
Yeah.
again, I use that, but I also use things like public safety, cost-benefit ratio, and I don't need to read my criteria to you. But that's the way you rank projects. That's the way you rank things, not just alphabetically, let's say, but by looking at getting down into the weeds as to how much benefit that's going to be, what percentage of the population it impacts positively. Is it nature-based? I read that loud and clear. But that's what the town staff, I think, really needs to do with our help. But particularly people like Dustin Graham and Matt Sorrells with Stormwater.
Yes.
By them looking at this, I think they can say, going to John's point, what is affordable? What cost-benefit ratio?
Yeah.
And so that we rank projects. I mean, something like raising the bulkheads in this town, that's such a political and an economic task, because you don't just add 2 feet onto the top of a bulkhead. You have to reinforce it. You have to go down low to do it. And a bulkhead doesn't stop flooding, it stops erosion.
Correct.
So there's things that we need to look at.
Correct.
Where
I'm going to pause you just for a second. So let's on new business A, we have our marching orders. Let's forward your comments to me.
Okay. And give us a deadline so it's clear to us.
Today by the close of business.
Close of business today. All right.
All right. I will combat those, collaborate them, and forward them to Moffett, Nickel, and DCM. Moving into part B of this, the projects. I'm going to use the word.
Thanks for reminding us to
absolutely.
do that.
I know we're getting in the weeds in this. I want to throw out the word acceptance, and what I mean by that is accept them as the ideas of what we can do, because essentially we have these 11 project ideas or umbrellas that we can work with. And I'm going to look to Lisa in a second, hopefully nod her head yes. But essentially you can take these projects ideas 11, we can accept them as 11, but you can branch these off of any amount of other projects that you want to.
Or combine them.
Yeah, because essentially you're going to prioritize them, throw out the ideas that what would work to staff and not really DCM. Because the staff is going to be the ones to take these and move it to the next level, and how we look at different grants, working with y'all to how to make it work.
How can we assist you in that step?
Kind of to be determined.
Okay.
Moving into 3 and 4, I know we're getting ready to move into budget season. on what this looks like. I'm going to leave it up to the town administrator to use these as capital improvement projects because that's what they were essentially assigned to do. Former administrator was looking to get projects out of this for capital improvement to span those out over an X amount of period of years. And that's going to be the next step is taking these projects, fixing the risk vulnerability assessment, if that's what we need to do to help get funding for it.
Well, if it's saying something that's wrong in the book,
Sure.
we don't want that to move forward.
Correct.
With.
And it's just going to be conversations with Lisa of how we navigate this and bring it to ultimately to council because it's going to cost money. Comments? Yep, she's nodding her head. And that's just where we're at. I mean, and I understand the frustration. I understand that, you know, $90,000 between 3 towns, $30,000 a piece, drop dead date of January 31st, move forward with this. I understand the frustration. That's just kind of where I'm at. That's where staff's at. That's where the town's at. And then move forward. You know, we got behind the 8 ball. And that's just exactly where we're at. And I definitely understand the frustration.
If you, just as a sidebar comment, if you look on the websites of the other towns that are the other 2 towns, they are further along than we are. And that's disappointing. And I made the comment of that at our last meeting in Moffett Nichols didn't have a response. And they don't owe me a response necessarily.
Right.
But
Did they get the projects at the same time? I mean, were they down to 4 months, 5 months? I mean, well, it originally was 6 months.
they were a couple of months ahead of us.
I think they also got an earlier jump start than we did on this whole thing too.
Well,
So
that explains why.
and I can take blame for that. Maybe I didn't navigate this as
All right.
started.
What's
as soon as we
the
did.
step?
So,
Do you want us to, if the staff is going to take these 11 projects, and I think you would benefit by comments, and I've sent you mine on these 11 projects by ranking them and by making a comment about particularly one of them that I thought was not correct, geographically not correct.
I would not necessarily think we need to rank them. We can rank them at a different time. If you want to send me your rankings, I can get with Lisa.
I said you're supposed to do that. No, it's not a
I
requirement.
would say the more important
It's recommend. It says official ranking is not a requirement of program, but we recommend.
Yeah, what I would do is recommend
I don't think ranking was
any
that
minor
particular.
changes that need to be made to them.
I agree that ranking's probably not as important
Because
as
the
substance
ranking
of
is
the
going to come
project.
into what the town can afford, the length of the project. You know, like Mr. Corbett said, you work with outside agencies such as DOT and all these and bulkheads. You know, that's going to be and you probably potentially could get in some grant funding and assessments, and we know how much fun
So much of
assessments
that's
are in
private
these
property
towns.
too.
Where you're looking at longer term over multiple years of projects and multiple years of trying to get to that point to where it is something that is obtainable.
So if you need, as town staff discusses these projects, or is your plan to not do anything and submit the projects as a part of this program as they're stated?
I would be very interested in your comments,
Okay.
not the prioritization.
Okay.
That way I could forward them. Again, if DCM accepts them, at least the town can look forward to, I mean, they're our projects. This is our document, just like the land use plan, just like the UDO. You know, I mean, we heard the UDO was written in 2012.
But the way it was reformatted,
not was written by a contractor. We're hiring B contractor to rewrite it.
isn't Moffett Nichols isn't the consultant supposed to spill over into the next stages to help us with grant funding, with scoping? That's what I had thought.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, because
And allocates more money to pay for that.
Yeah, because the grant was only supposed to, exactly, the grant was only covering for the contractor to be named for us
Yes.
for stages 1 and 2. Now, whether stage 1 and 2 was actually completed to their fullest extent, that's, been the main topic of conversation today. But moving into 3 and 4, it could be choose your own adventure, and what Mr. Corbett said, if council chooses to throw more money at it. That's where staff is at.
Okay. So in other words, as part of the community action team here, we will wait in case you might need us for something.
Correct.
But the resources
and I
you
think
have
the
within
plan
town
is,
staff.
there's too much knowledge on this board, and we have 2 more planning board members coming on next Thursday. You have the rest of the ERC there, and then you have the rest of the council. There's too much knowledge in this town not to use it, and I plan on using it. I just don't know what the capacity of that is right now. We'll know soon enough.
Will this committee stay, in your mind, stay set at 5 right now? Or will the 2 new appointed, once they're sworn in, planning board
I
members?
think we'll use this committee as we need to,
Okay.
and I would probably bring on. I don't know what that would look like.
Will we schedule another meeting?
Not in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
I would work with staff to kind of see what that looks like. So
At some point, won't the council get involved in
yes, yeah.
also
the
discussing
council's
and
gonna have
determining the makeup?
Yeah, I mean, if staff is talking to using the expertise, staff comes and is like, we've got to throw more money at that, then we're going to have to figure out how much money, who's going to do it, and bring that to council for ultimate approval anyway. So, and that's just kind of where we're at.
All right, so we've already talked about the part A with the risk assessment. We're going to get that to you by close of business today.
Yep.
I'll submit to you that I'll promise to you that I will, as looking at projects, if I've got comments on certain projects, I will get those sidebar comments to you as
Yes,
well.
as well.
Yep. Not necessarily to be shared with Moffett Nichols, but to be used by you and staff as you look at the projects.
Correct.
Because you may not, and I hope we don't, submit the projects as worded exactly in the Moffett Nichols regurgitation of our projects, because it's not correct.
And I'll refer to Mr. Farrell over here to, there's blanks in that spreadsheet. If you look at the spreadsheet of a project, there's blanks in it. There's no estimate cost next to it. There's fill in the blanks that I think staff is going to have to work with. I don't know if that was supposed to be done in step 2 or as we move into step 3 and 4.
That was supposed to be in the data, and it's estimated cost, of course, but my understanding is that when we identified these things, we were supposed to put some kind of a ballpark of cost for.
Okay.
Yeah, it says estimated value.
In fact, when Ron and I, as our team, put our spreadsheets together, and I tried to follow some of the templates they provided.
Mm-hmm.
The cost column, I just left blank because that's something
sure.
that had to be done later.
Yep.
Because I don't know enough.
And that's
to
going to
do
be a
that.
question probably for staff back to Dawn. It's like,
Right,
okay, at
right.
what point do we put a cost?
Well, on
to
Moffett
it?
Nichols' list, they did, to their credit, when they submitted the 11 projects back to us more recently, there were spaces for each one of these things: project name, description, project estimated cost, that were blank.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that has to be filled in. Now, it does say estimated cost, but I think our town staff probably is in a better position than even Moffett Nichols to say what the costs of those are relatively going to be.
Now, I'm going to throw a wrinkle in, not really a wrinkle in this process, but I'm going to throw you a curveball that's going to be very easy to hopefully hit. There's a kind of a part C. Oh, I know, we'll be aware of that. But part C of this is going to be DCM has requested Moffett Nichols get some kind of community feedback on this stuff. That's going to be on the website. So DCM wants direct citizen comments back specifically on this. So
On this vulnerability statement and
so
assessment
there's
and on the projects?
and that's going to be open up to the community on the website.
That's great. That'll
So
give us a chance to
You're
comment on
citizens
it.
of the town, and I expect y'all to use that to your fullest capability.
Honestly, I believe that citizens of our town are going to be more critical of
Sure.
this than we are.
So,
I hope.
yeah, because I mean, how many? We have 2 police officers that live in town. So, I mean, and firemen. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and that's going to be your biggest thing is like, use that to your fullest capability. Provide because those will go back directly to DCM.
DCM, good.
My biggest concern is the number of people who go, RCC what?
Yeah.
And somehow or the other, I think we need to get out to the town. I mean, not just the website, because obviously not a lot of people are reading the website. Somehow or the other, get it out, what this project is and how they can be involved.
Sunshine list. Is that something you could do?
It's difficult. I mean, if the question you get asked is when's high tide and what's my tea time, seriously because we're a retirement community.
I know. And I don't think we had enough information on the questionnaires that were filled out. I don't think enough. I don't know that it necessarily represents what the town thinks and what the town feels.
Well, there's also people that started out. We had, I think it was, we had 10 people went out and did assessments on this. No, she haven't really, Mrs. Hovenreal can provide direct comments.
Well, she
Noel,
did it as one of our teams.
and Noel is part of that as well. I mean, y'all know people who can provide those comments back that actually know what RCCP stands for, or the hazard part of this, because I think there's going to be people who pay attention to that, because every time we get hit by one of these storms, or whatever's out there, nor'easter, tornadoes or not, the citizens of this town and the staff sees the impact on them.
If we could get a story in the paper, because a lot of people get the Brunswick Beacon, and if we got an article on what this is all about and how important it is to us, I don't know how we do that.
Well, you write it and send it in to them. If we write it and send it in to them, odds are they'll publish it. If they have to come and listen to us talk and then write it and digest everything, they won't do it.
No. Okay.
So,
I mean, I can look. I don't know what the cost of putting an ad in the paper for this would look like, but I'm sure that's something.
Well,
staff
they'll
can
put
look
it in
at
public
as well.
service, but the problem is it's. I don't want to say it's too late because it's never too late.
Sure.
But if that had
I
been
think
done,
the public comment period is, and I don't know the exact how long it's going to be open. I'll find that out. But I think that could be a valuable asset to how this could also, at least these 5 people up here could provide.
well,
comments to
I'd
that.
submit that a lot of the people that responded to our original survey were prompted by us 5 up here that were going to our neighbors and saying, "Here's an opportunity for you to get your opinion out there."
What I will do, I will find out how long that comment period is going to be, and fight for a length of something substantial,
All
to
right,
where
so
those comments can be feeded back toward DCM from y'all.
any comments on the project list you want back again by the close of business today?
Correct.
I mean, I think to go any longer than that is
Yeah,
is-
it's. I mean, yeah,
Cutting off our-
yeah.
next.
Mr. Chairman. The
Please, Joe.
project list, I think is a good starting point. Each one of these items, while we can combine some of them, as I went down through them, I thought, gee, that's a good idea. But that's one spot, but there's 2, 3, or 4 additional spots where that is a good idea.
Yes.
So what I want to do is and I tried to put that in my notes, but I want to try to make that a little bit clearer that say add these locations.
And I think if you want to, not by the close of business today, if you want to direct that towards staff, because I agree with you, there is project ideas that are in there that are not just the one thing, and
Right.
can mean different things. And I'll go back to Fire Station 1, and then the vulnerability of that, and potentially I'm sure there's grant money out there to help towns turn into a less vulnerable emergency operations center type thing.
Well, FEMA should be
Yes.
a great source of
Sure.
help for
So, and you're right. It's you take one idea. It's not just here. You could probably take. So you're going to have some projects where you can consolidate them, but you can also take one project and turn it into multiple different projects over a certain span of area.
Right.
So
For
I agree.
example, the living shoreline they talk
Yes.
about down by the town park.
Yep.
There's a dozen different
Yes.
living shoreline projects that
Yes.
would be very valuable and beneficial to
Because the
don't
other
we
one-
already have one of those going?
Yeah, that
have-
limited
yeah.
area is already in the works.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
it makes sense to keep that in its own.
I know, but you can say, that's a good idea. Do that here and here and here and here. And it would
Yeah.
solve other problems. And
Yes.
those were things we identified in our initial, the
Well,
windshield.
the town
Survey.
staff can take that and
Yeah.
and massage it.
Yes, absolutely. And we've already kind of started doing that in our head. So that's kind of where we're at.
So, well, on the projects, I've submitted my comments. I ranked them.
I think it's important.
I think we should rank them.
I don't want to do.
I think we should rank them.
I think that's important, and I know I'm interrupting you. I think that's important to rank them, and what John Farrell was referring to, rank them and do the caveats. It's like, well, we could do this. I just don't. I think that's more important to direct towards staff.
Well,
instead
but I
of
also think
DCM.
we know what the focus of this particular program is.
Yes.
I think people like to see stuff in the way they would have liked to have seen it.
Yes.
So I think it would behoove us. It's not. There's only 11 of them. To give them at least on the top 3 out of the top 5, be focused on what they probably will approve and fund, and then and then down from there. But I think people who read that like to see the stuff they're concerned about on the top of our list, and it wasn't that hard to do.
Right.
I mean, because some of them are completely obvious.
You're right. Rain gardens are
Right.
they're a nature-based solution. I have that as number 1.
Right. So I think the document submitted, I'm assuming the risk assessment involved gets submitted to DCM, and then some sort of project, I don't know, I guess in a spreadsheet form. The handbook says you get it in a spreadsheet. I don't know. Whatever they send to them should reshuffle all the projects in kind of what you expect DCM to like to see, because people really feel better when they get it that way.
Yeah.
And I just don't find it that difficult to do.
Ron's bringing up a great point here. I wonder, and I worry and wonder, is Moffett Nichols going to submit to DCM, in addition to the assessment report, the risk assessment charts that were outlined by the DCM report? And I would think we would have seen them.
Well, yeah, it's the spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it's supposed to look. They
Yes.
give you the picture.
Well, if I was DCM, that's the way I'd want to see it.
So I'm assuming that spreadsheet we got, they're just sending them the spreadsheet. I don't know
Probably.
I don't know if they want it in PDF form or spreadsheet.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
And I could show you how to get all the tabs to print on one PDF if you like someday.
Well,
Yeah,
but they
absolutely.
provide templates, and they provide
Yeah.
very specific templates.
And their
in here
template
have-
that they gave us on their spreadsheet matches the one in the handout, sort of,
well,
mostly.
but for projects.
Yeah, and the project one does too. When you turn to page in the handbook here, they kind of gave you the table that way. Somewhere here, I'm hoping John jumped in. It told me consolidate and prioritize here. See,
26, page
Right there.
26.
this table here is exactly what we got.
On the projects, yes.
So I'm assuming they're going to send them that spreadsheet or a PDF version of the spreadsheet with those boxes. That's why they sent it to us that way.
What page is that?
It's page
26.
26 of the handbook.
And I agree, when it comes to the projects, that's what they have done, leaving the majority of the items
And,
blank.
and when you get down to, and you see here, there's the project rating and project map, and I'm sure those boxes were blank on our spreadsheet, right?
Yes, I'm looking at it.
I mean, but they're kind of telling, and then there says there's minimum requirements on here. So this is what they'd like you to do, but then they said there's kind of minimum requirement, which softens a little bit on that if you read that green box underneath there.
Yeah, the biggest one I don't know how we fill in is the cost estimate of this, because
It doesn't sound like they really need it. Estimate
Yeah,
total
right.
project. If you look at the minimum
'Cause-
requirement, they don't even mention that.
right. 'cause
They
there's
say
no-
if available.
right.
in the chart
I
here
think
on
they
page
kind of
12.
realize that that's kind of hard to do
It is.
in the
Until
first
you get
3
into the
months.
weeds of it,
Right.
it's kind of hard to put an estimate next to it.
Yeah, but some of the things you can. If we're talking about like a rain garden out here, we can put, Dustin can put a ballpark at that.
And then
We
how
can
many
throw it
do
at
we
it.
do? You're
Because
right.
we know it's not going to be $1 million, but we know it's going to be more than $1. So
Right.
you keep working until you get to that
Yeah.
$48,000 number.
Yeah.
And I just made that up.
Yeah.
Right. But to me, my point I want to make, I think that there is some value to ranking them and presenting them that way.
Okay.
Because people read the top stuff first.
Yeah.
And then they get a little bored and less interested as they read down.
Mm,
So if
you're
you
right.
give them the one that fit their project or our interpretation, and
Okay.
what John said of how they're going to want to first look at ones they could completely fund.
Yep.
And then I'm going to say, okay, yes, no, whatever. And then there's going to be this group we're not going to fund. I was unclear whether their funding included some engineering or not when I read it or not. But anyway, but we'll give you direction on where
Yeah.
to go. Go to FEMA, go to here.
Yeah, if you'll do that by the end of today, then staff will work with Dawn to the rest of the capacity on where we move forward with this. And
Don has the opportunity to view this YouTube meeting, I believe.
yeah. So
I mean, it is being broadcast.
yes.
I didn't see Alan.
Not for an hour and a half.
I mean, we're talking
Put it
about
on
phases
fast.
1 and 2.
Put it on
Phase 3 is
1.75.
the engineering phase.
Yeah, I couldn't
And
tell
there are
whether
grants,
That's
there are
fine.
grants
That's fine.
to be made for doing that.
right. I kind of interpret what that they could grant the engineering phase, but not the build phase,
Right,
even if projects weren't nature based.
right. But they want to see things that aren't nature-based. They want to see structural projects. I think they want to see our DOT activity. And they want to see other things that the town makes a high priority about. But they want the nature-based included as one of the top projects. And I think they would then be willing to possibly fund that and say, okay, we'll help you do this, but you need to go do this and that to get these other things. So it's
I agree, and that's why I use that as heavily weighted in my ranking.
right.
So we call business today.
All right,
Then
the rest of the committee, have we exhausted new business A and B?
I think so.
Staff comments?
Could you summarize just real quickly what you want us to do in terms of each of us to do today in terms of the projects?
Okay, I thought I had done that, but let's do it
Okay.
again so we're all
Yeah,
on the same page.
yeah.
you
Thank you,
want me to
John.
do it, or are you going to do it?
You tell us what you expect from us.
All right. By the end of the day, comments on your risk vulnerability assessment.
Okay,
All right.
that was clear.
I will take that, put it in one document, forward it back to Don. Part B, give me your minor comments, prioritization if you'd like. I can also forward that on to Moffett, Nickel, and DCM as well. And then staff, I know Lisa and I, or I know I will, I'll probably rope Lisa into this as well, talking to Dawn after this meeting, so sometime later today or tomorrow, and talk to her about the final steps of this, where we move into 3 and 4, and then what that public comment period will look like, and I will let y'all know.
Okay. And obviously, if you need the assistance, even
Yes.
on a very limited basis
Yes.
or anecdotal basis, from
Yes.
I know that all of us would be
Yes.
willing to talk with you or
Yes.
talk with staff.
Yes, and you know, further in staff comment, I just want to take the opportunity to thank you. Thank you for the time you put into this currently, and then the time we're going to call on you to put into this more. This doesn't end today. It's just staff is at the point where we're through 1 and 2 essentially, and then moving forward with these into 3 and 4, and how to navigate that. And staff will talk and move forward, and we have a budget meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I'm sure the mind turning will start at that point and go from there.
Any comments from any of the community action team members that maybe wasn't highlighted in what Chad just outlined?
I would only say one other thing, and that is, Chad, you've commented a couple times that maybe you didn't do enough. But I think it's the responsibility of the project manager from Moffett and Nickel to lay out for us clearly what has to be done and when it has to be done, and to follow up and push on us to get things done. So if they expected something earlier or differently, that should have been brought to your attention immediately, and I'm not sure they did that.
Okay, appreciate it.
So
Any-
I wouldn't beat yourself up.
Thank you,
That's
John.
always the risk of doing a
Well-
project without a project plan.
We'll
Right.
echo that.
Right.
Good thought. Ron, anything to add?
Nope.
Sybil?
No.
John Corbett?
Just, are we basically going to work off of your prioritization list in terms of priorities?
Not
Or-
necessarily. I have not changed the project numbers from what Moffett Nichols started with. So that's my opinion that I sent to you,
Yeah.
blind copy. But I sent it to Chad. I would say let's start from Moffett Nichols' list, keeping the projects in, not necessarily in that order, but don't take my prioritization and work from there. I think it would degrade, confuse the topic.
And I can consolidate those as well. I can take a running average of how we prioritize.
As long as we don't change the
Yeah.
project number, it probably doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Well, I think there may be some change in terms of we might adjust some of the sequence, for example, that you have.
Yeah, well, there's,
But I think if we submit 1 through 11 the way they had 1 through 11, that really skews, I think, the perspective of the town. But the projects like you have, project number 5, should be the first priority.
And I can always take
Well,
project 5, parentheses, 1 through 11.
but on the table, there's a priority rating box.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I can fill that in.
I
I
mean,
can do a
we-
running average and fill it in.
They've only filled up the type of solution. Then comes project estimated cost, the tempo
Ron's
implementation,
right.
timeline, and
Yeah.
there's a box called project rating.
Okay.
We're supposed to put our rating in that box.
All right.
Whether we do it how will we do it? ABC?
Do you see what he's saying,
1 through
John?
11.
Yeah, I see it in the box there, but it's not in the document that they
Yeah.
provided
The
us.
spreadsheet they sent us.
It's in the Moffett Nichols spreadsheet they
It's
sent
in the
us.
spreadsheet, but Moffett and Nichols did not use the spreadsheet. They use this. We've talked about that,
Okay.
and this is the thing that they have right now.
Well,
Somewhere on.
I took the spreadsheet and converted it to PDF. So if something was left off, it was in
Oh.
that spreadsheet, then it was probably me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Ron said, apparently I need to go to the Ronald Bruno School of how to turn Excel and Word into PDF.
No,
So-
there-
Or just send us the Excel
Happy to
sheet,
come in and do that for you.
Chad.
Yes,
Just send
sir.
us the Excel sheet. We can move it through around. On
Okay,
our,
I can do that.
You know, and so at least we have the information.
Can
then
you
we're
get
not-
that to us in time?
Yep,
If
I
you-
can get it. I'll do that before I go to lunch.
All right.
Don't
mean,
send-
I don't need it,
Don't send
but
me
it's-
another one.
No,
Okay.
John, we already got that.
Yeah.
All right.
That
I'll
was-
send it to. I'll
that
send it
email
to.
with all the attachments included.
The spreadsheet was there, but
Oh,
I don't need another one.
All right. It was an
Okay.
email with about.
okay. We
It
got
just
4
wasn't
attachments.
spreadsheet. It's just
in it.
lists.
Okay,
No,
I saw the
there was a
Excel and
spreadsheet
didn't
there.
know.
No, but I didn't use
It's
that
further
document.
down.
I didn't use that document.
So
Okay. All right. Sorry.
All right. Anything else to add before we consider a motion for adjournment? Want to thank town staff for their work here, and we're here, eager and ready.
And patience.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Second.
moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Adjourned.